Good afternoon, and thanks for inviting me. I'm glad to be here. I'm Mayor Bogard. Sends his greetings. This is his final term. He's decided not to run again. So those of you that know him, this is sort of his. He just finished his last State of the City address earlier this last week. I wanted to start, for those of you that don't know us, to get a little bit of a background on Pasadena, not very much, but just to kind of give you an idea where we are. We're a city of about 140,000 people. We're about 23 square miles. We're one of the three oldest cities in the Southern California area, which means that we are going on about 127 years old at this point, I think, something like that. And as such, we have a very mature urban environment that, as you can see here, is pretty much has a central district, and it's ringed by a lot of single-family neighborhoods, sort of in a typical place. What's unique about us is that we are about 10 miles northeast of downtown Los Angeles and are completely integrated into the overall fabric of the city of Los Angeles and all of the surrounding environments. So we may be a very small city, but we exist within a much larger urban fabric that basically plays out even a microcosm within Pasadena. So in many ways we are atypical of small towns, in other ways we're much more typical of bigger cities. So we have an interesting relationship as we go there. For as small as we are, we have something on the order of 97 neighborhood organizations. Which means that we are extremely deliberative, and it takes, as you see in my presentation here, you'll understand why we don't have a lot of built examples, but we have a lot of great plans and policies as we move forward. So what I wanted to start with really was just talking about where we are with our Complete Streets framework, how we're dealing with streets within the overall fabric of transportation in Pasadena, and bring it forward from the standpoint that all of this has been being done against the background of an update to our comprehensive plans, land use and mobility elements, or circulation elements, depending on how you phrase it in your general planner's comprehensive plan nomenclature. And in that framework, we really have been working to build on some activities that have been going on since about 1994 in Pasadena, where there was a sea change, which I'll move on to in a second here. But starting from that, it really has given us the framework to be able to come in and develop a series of components to this in terms of looking at what we have, developing a set of policies and using those policies to really refine down to a set of tools that take an integrated approach. You heard about that in one of the last presentations we talked about. But given where we are in the process, what we have for funding availability, how long it takes us to do things in Pasadena, the idea of using an integrated approach in which we take this concept of complete streets and streets for basically looking out for vulnerable users, looking out for how to get around Pasadena without a car, which is one of our general plan's guiding principles, and integrate that into all of our plans and policies and design documents, and anything that we're making decision-making on at the public level, gives us a way to make certain that as we move downstream from where we are today, we are actually implementing those techniques. You saw that talked about in the sustainability approach last time, and that's really what we're trying to do here. We've even taken that a step further at this point in time, and basically saying you really need to pay attention to what you're measuring. Because if you don't measure the right things, you don't set goals for those things that you're measuring that get you to the outcomes that you want to achieve for either sustainability or complete streets or improve street systems for your overall user population, then you're not going to be able to deliver those types of activities and those types of projects. So we've spent a lot of time now over 5 years on our metrics, and finally have adopted them and we're moving forward, and that will be the primary thing I'm going to be talking about. Just to finish up here, really thinking about the idea that engaging the public, which we heard a lot about last time, is really, really important. We're continuing to bring the sustainability process into our street design process. We're now using a triple bottom line approach to how we do project development, and it's been very successful in a couple of times that we've applied it to date now. So I would encourage you to continue thinking about that and some of the sustainability processes that you see in that part of the lexicon, and bring that into your street design and other design activities that your city is working with. This is the unintelligible graphic that basically shows that we do have a plan. We've looked at integrating all levels of our plan, from operations to design, in terms of how we operate all of our transportation system, and are bringing this through so that we have a consistent set of goals and policies that are being applied on a day-to-day basis in terms of traffic management, that are being applied over our project development process, and that are being applied literally over our funding process to be able to make sure that we're allocating resources in the correct emphasis. Quick thought about this in terms of, if you may or may not have thought about streets from a more of a form-based standpoint. But it is possible, and you're seeing more and more examples of how streets can be dealt with from a form-based coding standpoint, within which you basically begin to redefine, rather than using a collector, local collector arterial approach to traffic hierarchy of streets, you begin to think about defining your streets in terms of the function they provide within your community or within your region, and how those streets respond to the types of land use that are adjacent to them, or a context basis. And if you begin to think about this in a two-dimensional framework where you have context on one axis and function on the other, you begin to start defining a series of design decisions that match better the activity pattern that is on the street or the activity pattern that you're trying to encourage. And so within that framework, you're beginning to build, in essence, a series of things that basically have outcomes that you can begin to predict. And that's the basis of what we've been using in terms of a context-based street typing plan that is being adopted as part of our current general plan update. We came up with about 4 types of streets that were important within Pasadena. Like I said, we're a relatively older urbanized area. So we have a series of connector type of streets that basically provide the ability to move across the city and in and around neighborhoods. And these have a particular characteristic to them. They don't get very big. They're 2 to 3 or 4 lanes. We have maybe 1 6-lane street in Pasadena. So we're able to essentially work with a much smaller inventory of types. Below that are access streets, and below that are alleys. And there's nothing earth-shaking about this, but it's the process of going out and quantifying and inventorying and categorizing that basically helps you and your engineers and your planners begin to understand what do we want to do with these streets, how do we take these and this physical inventory that's literally already built and retrofit it to be able to achieve the types of streets that we need for complete streets or for being able to get around without a car in a very effective fashion. Within that, obviously there are ways to begin to overlay transit emphasis or pedestrian or bicycle emphasis so that you can change the design characteristics. And if you can sort of extrapolate this, you're basically moving into creating a framework for design guidance that your engineers and your planners can use to be able to make sure that the projects they're bringing out to the public are already looking like what they need to look like before they go out for the public involvement. Or that you can actually use this as a process to bring the public in through a triple bottom line approach, to have them discuss what elements do you want on this particular street, and have a set of more common shared expectations about what the street cross-section is supposed to look like. The other component of this then, and this is something that we have recently just adopted within Pasadena, is a lot of work on the metrics. And what we had in Pasadena, even though we have had a very long-stated commitment to sustainability, a very long-stated desire to be able to move around the city without having to drive, is we had been using almost only metrics that related to automobile travel. We didn't have metrics for pedestrian and bicycle. And so as we went through our process of doing environmental review of projects, doing project development reviews, we were applying a lens that basically said we needed to make it, it was very important to us to be able to move faster and with less delay in automobiles through the city. And this was beginning to create a lot of conflict with our other principles that are stated in our general plan. And that's really then been the basis of where we've been going now, which has taken us literally 5 years to get to this point. But we were able to do that through a very long public process, very well attended, to be able to move forward to a set of metrics that really focus on those types of things that are important from a sustainability standpoint, those types of things that are really, really important in terms of protecting vulnerable users in the street system, and for being able to satisfy our general plan goals of being able to have a city that has accessibility to somebody who doesn't necessarily have a car, who may not want to drive, and who we would like to encourage not to drive in certain parts of the city. And that's where you wind up with seeing these types of approaches that are on the right-hand side of the screen here. In last December, now just about a month ago, our council replaced all of our thresholds for environmental analysis with the following 5 elements here. And we are now in the process of implementing this through our first series of environmental documents and project approvals that are moving forward right now. But we have moved to essentially adopt a metric that looks at VMT, or vehicle miles traveled per capita. In this case, it's a service population that is made up of residents and employees, so it has a mix across different land use types. That really measures the sustainability of travel within the city and is consistent with the state's AB 32 climate guidelines, as well as some of the other more recently passed bills that the state has put in place that we're working towards over a 2020 and a 2050 scenario. We supplement that with something called vehicle trips per capita, which really looks at the efficiency of trip making within a particular land use. And then we also blend into that then a series of metrics that look at how individual projects and plans respond to our goals for pedestrians and bicycles and transit use. And what that looks like when you begin to move it forward is you see that within Pasadena and with the way our land use is operating, we have a plan that basically intensifies use in the very dark green part area of the map, which happens to be the area where we have the most efficient VMT per capita production. That's where we have our most transit facilities, where we have our most bicycle and pedestrian networks are most complete. And it essentially is about reinforcing that walkable urban core through an intensification of development as part of our general plan. And so it's a matter of being consistent within this VMT production per capita. The vehicle trips per capita have a very similar kind of component, and so I don't have a graphic on that. But what we did do quite a bit through our general plan activity was develop a very refined walk score type of an analysis that we use to communicate with the public about accessibility. Because we talk a lot in transportation about mobility, we talk about congestion, we talk about delay, but what we're really talking about is how do people get to where they want to go. And that's really about accessibility. And there are a lot of things that are components of that. And what we were able to do with this document was have a very broad discussion across the city, particularly with the people that live in the dark orange areas around the outer edge of the city, which is a lot of our single-family hillside area, who have been very, very vocal about being able to drive around without having any delay, about why it was important to encourage a pedestrian and walkable core within this framework. And so we were able to have a change in the tenor of that discussion over the last 4 or 5 years through the plan development process, to where we have much better consensus right now across the city on support for walkability in these areas. And in fact, we've now had neighborhoods basically developing and participating in a Complete Streets Coalition who would have never thought about going in a Complete Streets Coalition 2 or 3 years ago. So it's been a very interesting vehicle for talking that through. We've integrated that into our overall mapping and our analysis of transportation projects. This is for right now, a quick snapshot from our recently released draft EIR on our general plan update that illustrates how pedestrian accessibility is being affected by the planning process as we go through our general plan update. We've also looked at transit accessibility. These are just happen to be sort of thermal maps of where we have high accessibility and low accessibility. Similarly with our bicycle network and our bicycle system. And both of these then are key to our ability to increase service or increase facility development across the city and form the basis for our general plan update, as well as how we see our transportation system moving through the next 15 years. Within that, the City of Pasadena has had a long-term relationship and very successful program in neighborhood traffic management that grew out of our earlier efforts to protect the neighborhoods that surround our central district from traffic intrusion. And as a consequence, that program, having run for about 15 years now, is beginning to run out of things to do. But we've been able to very successfully morph that into a Complete Streets program by bringing in not only just neighborhood and local streets, but essentially taking those complete street strategies and applying them to our much higher level type streets. And in the process of doing that, we've developed a 6-part workshop that basically is a way for us to help bring complete streets strategies and values out to the community, engage them in a series of workshops and tabletop exercises related to their neighborhoods to be able to meet their goals and illustrate how do we bring those pieces together in the framework. And it's been fairly successful going forward so far. One of the last pieces, and I'll close with this, is the fact that as we go through this process, there's still a lot of, and I'm sure you're all aware of this, disagreement at one level or another of the value of different street treatments, whether we put a bicycle lane in, whether it's a protected lane, whether we take space away from parking or space away from driving, whether we're talking about doing a road diet. Everybody has one or more sides to those arguments that they're more than happy to share with everybody, and we need to deal with those as we go through a consensus building process. We've been trying to approach this in a very full disclosure standpoint and work our way through that process. It fits our deliberative approach within the city, but it does take time and it means a lot of meetings. But on the other hand, it's been able to get us out to a point of having agreement across a very wide range of viewpoints if we can begin to get people to start seeing value in different aspects of the types of changes that need to be made to provide certain types of complete street modifications. So A lot of things here today on process from my standpoint, what we're doing from the framework. I don't have a lot of great examples. We're very, very close to finally getting our budget for our capital program over the next 3 years to actually allow us to implement some of these projects that we've had on the books for a while, and they're finally moving forward at this point. So hopefully if we get to come back at some future date, I'll have some better pictures for you. But with that, I'm going to stop, and thank you very much. Here's my information.